Letter 20. To Thomas Pennant, Esquire, Selborne, October 8, 1768. It is, I find, in zoology as it is in botany. All nature is so full that that district produces the greatest variety, which is the most examined. Several birds, which are said to belong to the north only, are, it seems, often in the south. I have discovered this summer 3 species of birds with us, which writers mention as only to be seen in the northern counties. The first that was brought me, on the 14th of May, was the sandpiper, Tringa hypoleucus. It was a cock-bird, and haunted the banks of some ponds near the village, and, as it had a companion, doubtless intended to have bred near that water. Besides, the owner has told me since that, on recollection, he has seen some of the same birds round his ponds in former summers. The next bird that I procured on the 21st of May was a male red-backed butcher-bird, Lanius colurio. My neighbour who shot it says that it might easily have escaped his notice, had not the outcries and chattering of the whitethroats and other small birds drawn his attention to the bush where it was. Its craw was filled with the legs and wings of beetles. The next rare birds, which were procured for me last week, were some ring ouzels, Turdi torquati. This week 12 months, a gentleman from London, being with us, was amusing himself with a gun, and found, he told us, on an old yew hedge, where there were berries, some birds like blackbirds, with rings of white round their necks. A neighbouring farmer also at the same time observed the same, but, as no specimens were procured, little notice was taken. I mentioned this circumstance to you in my letter of November the 4th, 1767. You, however, paid but small regard to what I said, as I had not seen these birds myself. But last week the aforesaid farmer, seeing a large flock, 20 or 30 of these birds, shot 2 cocks and 2 hens, and says on recollection that he remembers to have observed these birds again last spring, about Lady Day, as it were, on their return to the north. Now perhaps these ouzels are not the ouzels of the north of England, but belong to the more northern parts of Europe, and may retire before the excessive rigour of the frosts in those parts, and return to breed in the spring when the cold abates. If this be the case, here is discovered a new bird of winter passage, concerning whose migrations the writers are silent. But if these birds should prove the ouzels of the north of England, then here is a migration disclosed within our own kingdom, never before remarked. It does not yet appear whether they retire beyond the bounds of our island to the south, but it is most probable that they usually do, or else one cannot suppose that they would have continued so long unnoticed in the southern counties. The ouzel is larger than a blackbird, and feeds on haws. But last autumn, when there were no haws, it fed on yew berries. In the spring it feeds on ivy berries, which ripen only at that season, in March and April. I must not omit to tell you, as you have been so lately on the study of reptiles, that my people, every now and then of late, draw up with a bucket of water from my well, which is 63 feet deep, a large, black, warty lizard with a fin tail and yellow belly. How they first came down at that depth, and how they were ever to have got out thence without help, is more than I am able to say. My thanks are due to you for your trouble and care in the examination of a buck's head. As far as your discoveries reach at present, they seem much to corroborate my suspicions, and I hope Mr. Something may find reason to give his decision in my favour, and then I think we may advance this extraordinary provision of nature as a new instance of the wisdom of God in the creation. As yet I have not quite done with my history of the Edictnimus, or stone curlew, for I shall desire a gentleman in Sussex, near whose house these birds congregate in vast flocks in the autumn, to observe nicely when they leave him, if they do leave him, and when they return again in the spring. I was with this gentleman lately, and saw several single birds.